And the problem is we make it hard on each other to stay at the table, because David's kids, they look up and say, well, where's he going? He's not supposed to be at our table. Well, where is he going? And we're hard on each other. We make it hard to sit at that table. We look at each other and say, I know he's not coming to the table. We look at her and say, she need to quit. We look at the brother and say, he's not going to make it. You see, we're hard on each other at that table. And you live in Lodabar. No matter what you pay for your mortgage, you're in the ghetto. Don't think for 1 minute you're not in the ghetto. Oh, you live in the ghetto. We're at the end of a dying and a wicked system. It's nasty and filthy outside. They may have you pay more and fool you in your mind, but not in God's sight. We live in a filthy world. It's beneath Jehovah. It's across the tracks. It's in the ghetto. That's where we live. Now Mephibosheth, he couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand how the king wanted him to sit at his table. Isn't that the way we are? We can't appreciate Jehovah's loving kindness. We can't understand it. There's things about us we don't want anyone to know. We compromise. We capitulated. We went back at times. And we don't want anybody to know that. We don't understand Jehovah's loving kindness. And we tell people, there's things about me you just don't know. And when they give us commendation, we say, well, if you really knew how I was, you wouldn't say that, so now I feel worse. You know, there are some people that serve God. They pray that they can just die. They say, Jehovah, just let me die. You won't even let me die even. We feel we're not worthy to be at Jehovah's table. We can't understand his loving kindness. Mephibosheth, he couldn't understand it. He couldn't understand what he was doing at David's table. And many times he'd look up and see Absalom and say, oh, what a handsome a man. I got no business at this. Let me leave. And David would say, stay at the table. He'd look at beautiful Tamar and say, oh, what a woman. Ooh, I have no business at this table with Tamar. I can't measure up. He said, please, can I be excused? And David said, stay at the table. He looked at Solomon. How could he match wits with Solomon? He looked at mighty Joab and said, oh, the courageous man. One of his looks will kill me, so I'm not going to look at him. He's trying to stay at the table. Can I be excused, please? And David said, stay at the table. Now, in Israel, one of the worst things would be a dog. See, a dog in Israel was a dog. It's not the way we treat dogs here in the Western world. We hear dogs have houses and sweaters, give them facelifts and operations and things. No, in Israel, a dog was a dog. That's why the most terrible thing is for you to be killed and then to have the dogs lick you up. Mephibosheth could not understand Jehovah's loving kindness. He couldn't understand it. Look at what he said in 2 Samuel. Let's turn back just to 2 Samuel chapter 9. Look at verse 8. Look at what Mephibosheth says. 2 Samuel chapter 9 and verse 8. At that he prostrated himself and said, what is your servant that you have turned your face to the dead dog, such as I am? He said, I'm not even a dog, I'm a dead dog. Why are you showing loving kindness to me? Do you ever feel that way? You see, if you only knew the love that Jehovah has for us, if you could only understand the work and the effort and the appreciation that the faithful slave has for you, if you could only appreciate, it's not just a group of men printing literature in a building. They recognize the loving kindness of God. Sure, you've done wrong and you've been disciplined. You've had hard times. You've had trouble. Regardless of what you've done, regardless of the way you feel, stay at Jehovah's table. Jehovah's not limited. He's not like humans. As humans, we'll remember things and we'll never let you live it down. That's the way we are as humans. We'll sit back and say, I remember what he did back in 1982. We look at the sister in person and say, you know, she's so encouraging. And you say, well, she's all right. I know her back in the day, girl. Jehovah's not that way. Manasseh did on a large scale what was bad in Jehovah's eye. The Bible says on a grand scale he sinned against Jehovah. Jehovah not only restored him, he forgave him and made him king again. That's the God we serve. Jehovah says, don't be mindful of what these humans keep against you. Jehovah says, I'm not that way. A struggling person is not a bad person. We're just struggling, that's all. You're not bad. Just remain faithful and stay at Jehovah's table. You know, 40,000 people a year worldwide, they become inactive. They leave Jehovah's table. Are we making it hard for them to stay at God's table? Many, they come and they try when the mercy of God is pointed out at the memorial. Millions come and associate with it at the memorial, but they can't come back. They don't stay at God's table. Do we make it difficult for them to stay at God's table? Are we making them feel like a dead dog? You see, we're all crippled, brothers. Adam and Eve dropped every one of us. Let's make it comforting and encouraging to stay at Jehovah's table, regardless of what you've done, regardless of how you feel. Never think that Jehovah will not forgive you, because he's looking for people like us to show loving kindness to. Now, the thing about this table, the table, they didn't sit upright the way we're sitting now in this Western world. They would usually recline maybe on the hip, on the shoulder, on the elbow. That's the way they would recline at the table. And these tables, they were a little lower, and they had these long skirts, beautiful embroidered skirts, like tablecloths. Oh, you couldn't match them in these households of royalty. Beautiful long tablecloth. Now the skirt would cover the length of the table, and it would come over, it would cover everybody's leg. So when Mephibosheth, as a cripple, when he sat at the table, he was just like everybody else. All his frailties and infirmities, they were covered as long as he stayed at Jehovah's table. And Brother Siddick helped us to appreciate that that skirt pictured the ransom sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Jehovah is telling us that you're covered at this table. I got you covered at this table. Don't leave. Just stay at the table. You have all the covering. You have everything you need. I don't even see your frailties. I've been looking for people like you to show loving kindness to. 2 Samuel chapter 9. Let's look at this verse. Very encouraging. 2 Samuel chapter 9. Look at verse 11. So Ziba said to the king, in accord with all that my lord the king commands for his servant is the way that your servant will do. But Mephibosheth is eating at my table like one of the sons of the king. He was there. He was right there at David's table. It was Jehovah's loving kindness. And verse 13. And Mephibosheth himself was dwelling in Jerusalem, for it was constantly at the table of the king that he was eating, and he was lame in both of his feet. Mephibosheth stayed at that table. He stayed at God's table. Ziba said, okay, Jehovah, it's just like you saying it. He's like one of the sons of the king. He'll stay at your table. Mephibosheth said, sure, I've had hard times. And I'm a cripple. And I don't even understand this loving kindness. He said, but I'll never leave this table. And the Bible says it was at Jehovah's table he stayed, although he was lame in both of his feet. You see, the skirt had covered all of his sins, all of his frailties, all of his foibles, all of his problems. The skirt had covered his legs. Lovers of God and those who fear God, whatever you do, don't leave. We're almost home. We're almost home. Jehovah says, you're covered at this table. I love you. Don't ever doubt it. You know what Jehovah tells us? He says, why do you end a sentence with a question mark when I've ended it with a period? He's telling us that his son died for us. And he's been looking for people like us to show loving kindness to. Always stay at Jehovah's table.